Nation in Conversation, taking you on a journey through the South African countryside. Proudly sponsored by Monsanto, Nedbank and Senves, in association with Hinterland and NWK.
Hello and welcome to Nation in Conversation. We're on a journey through the South African countryside, and week after week we explore the diversity of our country and visit the many agricultural industries that contribute tremendously towards our economy directly and indirectly. Our journey today takes us to the Free State as we explore the beef industry. Whether it's a steak on the braai or a fillet in the oven, the beef industry has to be invited. This is what you can look forward to in today's program.
In Homegrown, we visit the jewel of the Eastern Free State, Clarens. Besides everything this town has to offer, we visit a local brewery to find out how craft beer is made. We then take the road to visit beef producers to gain insight into this industry. Burgess joins us in Context, and we visit Sparta Beef to unpack the value chain from farm gate to kitchen table. In Dialogue, Mpumelelo Mkhabela welcomes Michael Bradfield in studio to gain some interesting insights into this industry. Clarens, also known as the jewel of the Eastern Free State, is a beautiful town at the foothills of the Maluti Mountains. In its own right, Clarens is a tourism paradise. Many artists seek the solace of this peaceful town, thereby offering tourists a variety of art galleries to stroll through. There is no shortage of shops, handmade crafts and trinkets. The scenery is picturesque, mountains, dams and the most beautiful flowers, and above all, the spectacular sight of Golden Gate just around the corner. For the more adventurous traveller, there is as much to do: golf, hot air ballooning, fishing, safaris and a lot more. A visit to this town would not be complete without visits to the choice of restaurants. The town even boasts its own coffee roastery, with a barista that serves a cup of joe as fresh as it can get. After our exciting exploration through this alluring town, we took some downtime at Clarens Brewery. With a variety of locally produced craft beer, ciders and gin on offer, we could not ask for a better end to the day.
Here at the brewery, we're making our own craft beers, we make our own craft ciders, and we make our own craft gins. In 2000, we bought a farm plus minus 15 kilometers away from Clarens, where we subsequently have planted 23,000 trees. And early on, we recognized that there's a need for small, good quality apples that there's no market for. So we decided to make our own cider. So we went over to Normandy in France to have a look and see what they're doing, and then we came back and in 2003 we started making our own cider. 10 years ago we decided to open up an outlet in Clarens where we got the brewery, the cidery and the gin distillery. Currently we're buying small apples or damaged apples. Currently, like this year, we've got a lot of frost damaged apples that we buy from the farmers. We put it through a belt press, which we imported from Austria about 10 years ago. From the juice, it goes into big fermentation tanks where we add the yeast, and a few months later on, that that becomes our cider that we currently have. For the making of the beer, we're using malted barley or malted wheat, which goes through a crusher first, which just crushes it. After that, we put it into a mash tun, where the mashing process starts. In the mashing process is where the starches in the malted barley or the malted wheat gets converted into sugars. That takes plus minus an hour and a half. After that, we pump that or sparge that over to a boiler. In the boiler, we then add the hops, which helps with the bittering, the aroma, and the flavoring. After boiling it for plus minus 90 minutes, it gets cooled down very quickly, gets pumped into a fermenting vessel, where we then add the yeast. In the fermenting vessel, the temperature is controlled, so we keep that temperature depending on whether it's an ale or a lager at a very specific temperature. And about 2 weeks after that, we pump it over to conditioning tanks in the cold room where it will sit for another week or two, and where we then can bottle or keg the beer as we wish.
The perfect meal to pair with these amazing drinks was definitely a tasty piece of beef. Not too far from Clarens, we made a turn at Sparta Beef in Marquard.
Sparta Group consists of a group of companies. We have feedlots here in Marquard, where we are at the moment. It's in the Eastern Free State, for those of you who don't know. Then we also have a feedlot on the Vaal River near Potchefstroom, and we also feed cattle in the Kroonstad district. From there, our cattle, once they are market ready, we send them to our abattoir in Welkom, where we slaughter approximately 240,000 cattle per year. And we have a deboning facility where we actually primalize about 60% of our product. And we also take it to a further value add process to have a tray ready for retail. Sparta currently employs 1,500 people. We have approximately 100,000 cattle on our farms and in our feedlot. Most of the cattle are actually in our feedlots. We only have on the farms what we prepare or background, as we would call it in the industry, for our feedlot. Yes, we actually feed approximately 1,000 tons of feed per day that we mix and feed to our cattle.
Being a truly Free State company, we take pride in assisting our communities and participating in community initiatives as part and parcel of the community. If you look after your staff and you have happy people working for you, you are sure that you will get a good product that will satisfy your customers. We have a clinic on site which is manned by 2 qualified nursing sisters who look after the health of all our employees. And we also provide the services of a doctor once a week who will look after whoever needs medical attention from the doctor. And then over and above that, we have a canteen where we provide hot meals every day. Everybody gets a full lunch every day, that we are sure that they have enough food in their stomachs so that they have energy to be able to produce to the extent that our company requires. We also assist a number of schools with their feeding schemes, where they get protein from us twice a week to supplement their existing feeding schemes, so that we have healthy children who are well fed. And you will see that the Free State last year was the top performer in matric throughout the country. We feel we play a little bit in assisting towards that achievement.
One of the special projects Sparta undertakes to support their community is Mama Sophia's. We spoke to Carlien van der Walt to find out more about the phenomenal work they do.
Here at Mama Sophia's in Marquard, we're basically a school for children with disabilities. We really saw a big need for children in the surrounding areas living with disabilities, both mental and physical disabilities. We started the school and we are registered as an NPO. So basically we are dependent on donations. And our main initiator and heart behind the school is Sparta. They actually started the school and included all of us, and without them nothing would be possible. And we're very privileged to be having a yearly big donation day where all the proceeds go to the school, and Sparta's also behind that. So basically without them we wouldn't be where we are today, and we are forever grateful to them.
Although beef production occurs widespread throughout South Africa, the open pastures of especially the Eastern Free State makes this ideal cattle country. From Marquard, we hit the road all the way to Eric van Wyk on his farm Vryhof in Maritsani in the Northwest Province. Also here, it was clear how incredibly important good relationships are in the agricultural sector to ensure sustainability and success. Eric tells us more.
I've been a farmer for all my life, actually. But since my father died 25 years ago, I became a full-time farmer. I'm farming with cattle in the Maritsani area because the area allows itself for beef production. The diversity of this area is quite phenomenal because the rainfalls allows it, our soil allows it, and we can successfully produce maize and groundnuts and farm with beef. It is a phenomenal, actually a very good area to farm with beef due to our grasses. There is not quite a lot of sickness in this area. So it allows us to farm with cattle in a proper way. The trust with our agribusinesses, which is at this point of time the NWKs and the Southwest, which is in our region, is also very much important because we rely very heavily on their field personnel.
It's a relationship of trust between the farmer and us as the agribusiness, where he trusts that we give him the best advice that he could use to solve his problem. I think also with a higher input cost and sometimes lower product cost, it's very difficult for the farmer to stay on the farm. That, together with the population that's increasing so rapidly, makes it very difficult for the farmer to keep staying on the farm and produce food. So we need to protect them more and more just to stay on the farm, produce food for the population that's increasing.
Did you know there are about 13 million beef cattle in the country? It is referred to as the national herd and comprises animals for slaughter and breeding.
As was the case with many of the other stories we've heard throughout this series, we have some of the best producers that value good relationships with their employees and communities. The beef industry is no exception. After the break, Chris Burgess joins me in studio to share his insights on the industry. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to Nation in Conversation. Today, exploring the beef industry. It affects all of us, so please join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter. With me is Chris Burgess from Landbouweekblad. Hi, Chris.
Hi.
In some cultures, one's wealth is actually determined by how many cattle you have. Traditionally, lobola is actually paid in cattle.
Yeah, cattle is the bedrock of, is still the bedrock of many people's wealth. I mean, if you look in the former homelands, you know, animals, cattle are seen as an insurance policy. And I mean, there's some estimates that up to 40% of our national herd of cattle actually are farmed by communal farmers. You know, our Nguni race, for instance, the Nguni cattle, I mean, it's one of the most fertile races in the world and one of the most hardy. So it's a real South African treasure, you know. But, and I mean, these farmers were really hard hit by the drought. And we don't really have accurate estimates, but I think a lot of people's wealth was wiped out. And specifically with all the problems that we had in the mines, people moving back, you know, that was the last little bit of wealth they had. So, I mean, really a sad situation.
Before we get back to Chris, we visited Sparta Beef in Welkom to take us through the process from farm gate to kitchen table.
Our role in the value chain actually is historical because originally we were feedlotters and farmers. And after deregulation, abattoirs, state abattoirs were for sale, and it was almost to be able to slaughter your animals, you had to acquire abattoir, especially if you were our size. And from there on, obviously, if one has a business, then you need to optimize that business. And as the rest of the world did, primalize product further. Swinging carcasses weren't in fashion anymore. We started a boning facility. And further, we developed into further value add as well as retail ready packaging. So, but we've actually realized all the advantages. We can actually, by being involved in the value chain, we can assure meat quality in terms of what the animals are fed. Also meat safety in terms of knowing exactly the route that the animals followed, and then also consistency of supply, which is very important. We actually have a huge stock holding, so it's not a situation of beef has become scarce and then we all of a sudden cannot actually supply the retail. So we can actually manage our supply of our stocks to have a consistent supply of beef to the country.
We've got quite a diverse team in operations where everybody that's part of the farming, the production chain, or where we do backgrounding of cattle, preparing the animal for the feedlot, and then we take it through the feedlot process where we've got an electronic identification system. We also got some precision feed systems where we try and optimally feed our cattle in optimal days and get it ready for the abattoir. It's important to look at a complete value chain when it's even starting with the production of the calf throughout the feeding of the animal and actually the further extension into the abattoir. There's a lot of opportunity where we can engage and set up businesses for that matter and make agriculture be quite a success story.
After this visit, it's clear why we can deliver top quality red meat. Back to you, Chris. There's a variety of consumption patterns within South Africa in terms of beef.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think of beef, one always immediately thinks of fillet or rump or, you know, the prime cuts. But I mean, there's a lot more to a beef carcass than just that. And I mean, in the township market, for instance, it's quite interesting. At the Chisanyama's, if you ever go there, I mean the Soweto and Chisanyama markets, you get most of the meat comes from the front quarter. So it's meat with bone in, like the chuck, for instance. And I mean, there's a huge potential market there for beef producers to investigate and to market to. So you know, a person, as you say, you know, and needs to take into account that there's huge opportunity because we're such a diverse country to market meat into different segments of our society.
Thank you, Chris. After the break, Mpumelelo welcomes Michael Bradfield in studio to further our insights into the beef industry.
Welcome back to Nation in Conversation. With me today is Dr. Michael Bradfield, CEO of Breedplan South Africa. He is an international livestock consultant and is here in the studio with us to share some insights on the beef industry. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for your time.
Pleasure.
You know, in the African community, cattle is associated with a preservation of wealth, as well as the payment of lobola for your wife. But I'm sure there's something more to this.
Very much so. Yes, they say a camel is your gold, cattle, in Africa where I work, camel is your gold, cattle is your capital, and sheep and chicken is your petty cash or your cash. And so very much in the African tradition, very much so. Cattle is your capital. But whilst that may be the case, and it's used for lobola, etc., there's intrinsic value in there that if we can increase that intrinsic value, we can then uplift everybody and make the whole industry provide more wealth into the whole industry if we can do that. You know, the offtake in many countries, in African countries, on cattle is 2-3%. It should be around about 20%.
Yeah, which is a bit puzzling because, you know, if historically cattle among Africans have always been associated with preservation of wealth for a family or even for a kingdom in some instances, why is it then difficult for black farmers to convert that into actually commercial, thriving, enterprise in a modern economy?
Yes.
What's the difficulty?
Yeah, the difficulty is exactly that. It's still used for cultural means as tradition, and we've got to get our mind around the fact that we got this wealth. As in with money, you can raise interest on wealth, and we should see cattle in the same way. That if we can increase our production, for example, at the moment, in the emerging sector, there's something like a 50% calving percentage. That means that every time you've got a cow, every second year we get a calf out of the cow on many of them. Yeah. So if you could produce one every single year, as the same that happens in the commercial industry, you could almost double the income that comes out of the emerging sector.
So there's the need for differentiation on how you breed for what purpose.
Yes, very much so, and how you go about that breeding and how you go about the management, and the fact that you'd like to try and increase your production in such a way that just the very basic is to have a cow that produces a calf every single year compared to one that produces a calf maybe every second year, for example, because you might just want to feed it a little bit more. And if you feed it a little bit more, it'll produce a calf every year compared to feeding it, putting it onto almost like a starvation ration. Yeah. And then it struggles, it's not going to calve for you, and therefore you're not going to get the income out of it.
But is there any value at all in the distinction between the traditional way of raising cattle and the modern way where, you feed the cattle and you subject it to all kinds of medical treatment, and it grows faster and all of that? Is there a value in the differentiation of the way you...
Yes, well, every factor needs to be taken into account. So just on the feed side, if you got cattle, for example, and you just graze them on a piece of land, and you're not saving the land for the winter time and the autumn time, you're not dividing your land up into parts, for example, where the grass can actually recover, and you just keep on grazing that same piece of grass, eventually you're going to get erosion, but you're always going to substantially reduce the amount of fodder that's available for your animals. So just on that side, you already a step backwards, if I want to put it that way. Then, of course, animal health is just as important. You say, well, it's going to be too expensive to inoculate for the different diseases, but by inoculating for those different diseases, the income that you get out of that is worth far more, the returns are worth far more than the input that you've put in. So you might think you're saving money by not inoculating our animals, etc. But actually the cost in the end of the day is a lot more than what you would have if you put that in. And then at the end of the value chain, you've got the problem that you don't have a good product to sell. Yeah. And so you feel you've been discriminated against by the marketplace because they don't want to pay you a lot for your animal. Yeah, yeah. But actually it's a self-defeating exercise. If you haven't fed it properly, you haven't inoculated it properly, you can't then go and expect to sell it at a good price.
And how would you recommend the meat should be consumed? I mean, there's a lot of debate out there about how best to consume.
Yes, well, I think at the end of the day, we all want to, you're going to pay a little bit more for meat than what you're going to pay for some of the other proteins. So you want to have a nice eating experience. Yeah. So the meat that you consume should be tender. I don't think we all want to sit there and chew an old piece of tacky for a long piece of time. So we want a tender piece of meat. We must be juicy, must be flavorful. And those are all factors that affect it. The breeding that affects it, the health, how we manage it, the aging of the meat, etc.
Thank you, Michael, for joining us. Lovely insights there. I'm sure we can go on and talk about this, but it's been a pleasure talking to you. There you have it from Michael. You enjoy the South African meat while tender. Nicer that way. Thank you for joining us. Until next time.
Thank you, Mpumelelo. Very enlightening, as always. Next week, we explore a product that pairs well with beef on any menu, potatoes. So don't miss this part of our journey. Until then, remember to exercise your rights as a consumer. It affects us all. Goodbye.
Nation in Conversation, taking you on a journey through the South African countryside. Proudly sponsored by Monsanto, Nedbank and Senves. In association with Hinterland and NWK.